Hi, welcome back everybody. Another beautiful week in Newfoundland. In fact, today was absolutely stunning looking across the pond. And there's even still tonight people out on sups and kayaks. Anyway, if you're returning, thank you very much. If you're new here, I'm Ginny. And what I talk about is rebuilding my life. I'm 62 years old. My husband died 3 months ago. And there's a lot of things that I just didn't think about or didn't realize. So this week's video is about solo travel or planning the vacation or holiday, depending on where you're from and what term you use. I've traveled tremendously with business and alone, across continents, and jumped on planes and flown all night and arrived at hotels at midnight and checked in and gone back to work, or gone to work straight away if I arrive in the morning. Somehow planning a holiday or a vacation for me is completely different. So my husband died at the very end of April this year, and we had only been back in Canada a very short time. We'd only been here in Newfoundland for 7 weeks. What that meant was that financially, we were caught between two countries. His healthcare hadn't even clicked in to Canada. There's a 3-month delay when you move provinces or when you're new to the country. That has meant that everything I have done and continue to do is double. So, having a lawyer there, having a lawyer here, having to fill out forms here, having to fill out forms there. It's been quite exhausting. And just the admin and the logistics of the whole thing has been really tiring. And that's on top of the whole loss and going back to work, etc. So last week I was on my walk with the dogs, and I went back to my favorite park, and I was thinking about what I really need is a break. What I really need is and it's funny because my furniture only just arrived a few weeks ago. I've got all my stuff, everything's here, pictures are up, etc. But what I really need is to go to a spa and to drink some champagne and have a lovely meal that doesn't involve thinking about him or anything else. So that got me thinking, well, where do we go? What do I do? And again, Zeke, where do we go? Even though in our relationship, generally I did the planning. So if it came to admin, if it came to planning things, he was an input and a major stakeholder to use some business terms. I don't think that he particularly cared where we went most of the time, although Fiji was his absolute favorite place on the earth, and the guy had been to every continent. So I think he'd been to something like 105 countries or something. Anyways, Fiji was his all-time favorite. So I knew that, and we went to Fiji a lot. But Fiji for somebody in New Zealand is the equivalent of someone from Toronto going to Florida every winter. It's not far. It's easy. It's reasonably priced. Used to be. Well, I'm not going to Fiji. That would probably crush me. But when you start to think about where do you go, what are some of the considerations that you need to take? As I just said to you, those are the kind of the 3 things I really want to have. I want, the big fluffy bed with the pillows and just a little bit of luxury. And I think when I boil it down, what I'm really after is I want someone to look after me just for a few days. I'm quite happy to pay for the privilege. I'm also very lucky that I can pay for that. So planning a trip like that is very different to me getting on a plane, getting off somewhere in the world and going to a meeting, or sitting in a hotel room having dinner by myself, or any of those umpteen things you do when you're away at business. When I get to wherever I'm going, I won't be picking up the phone or texting to say, hey, I arrived. There's nobody on the other end to get it. Or sitting cross-legged on my bed in my room, banging out something that had happened that day. Those things are work. I need something that can give me some respite and to maybe charge my batteries a little bit. So being on the east coast of Canada and in Newfoundland, I started to look at, well, where are some of the places that I could go? The one criteria that was a must is, and this is horrible, I don't want to go somewhere where there's happy couples. I don't want to sit in a romantic resort in the Caribbean. That doesn't sound like fun to me. So I thought, well, I'm a bit quirky. What are some of the things I like? I thought, well, Iceland sounds like fun. I've seen the Northern Lights in the Arctic when we lived there. I've seen the Southern Lights, but I've never seen the Northern Lights from Iceland. That would be fun. Or Ireland. And to go away at the end of October or November, still off season, close enough to Christmas. I thought I could, wherever I go, there'll be some Christmas markets that might be fun to pick up some things. And then I started to look at the prices. Wow. So just the flights to Iceland, which is, by the way, only a 4.5-hour flight from Halifax. I have to get to Halifax, but it's considered off-season if I go at the end of October, beginning of November. So they want you to fly to Toronto and then to Iceland. So the flights are ranging between $4,000 and $6,000. And then on top of that, there was the tour. Because I thought, well, if I went, I did some research and do the ring road. And being that this is my first real holiday alone, that maybe a tour might be the way to go, where there's tour guides and you're counted, just like you were when you were a little kid and you went on a trip and you got in the bus and the teacher went 1, 2, 3. Oh, we're missing little Johnny down the road. Johnny, get in the bus. Silly, but I want somebody to notice that I'm gone. And everybody always knows that story from Australia where that couple went out and they were diving on the Great Barrier Reef and the boat didn't count the right people and left them out in the water and they died. So I'm not anticipating that. I'm not going on the Great Barrier Reef. But I thought, at least if I do a tour, somebody's going to head count me to make sure that I'm okay. So Iceland's a bit pricey. That's a lot more money than I had anticipated spending. So then I thought, well, what about going to Ireland? They're friendly. You can sit in a pub in Ireland by yourself with a book and a pint. Perfectly acceptable, normal things to do. Nobody's going to think funny. It's not some happy couples romantic thing. I thought, yeah, I'll go to Ireland. Well, again, you got to get to the mainland and they fly you out of Toronto or Montreal. So you have to go backward to go forward. And that one was a bit pricey as well. So I was thinking, I don't know. It's kind of a big decision. And I didn't want to leave, I've got 2 dogs. So I live in a town where there is no kennel and I don't really know anybody. And the people I do know aren't necessarily dog people. So that means me finding a kennel in another town. So I thought, okay, there's a town on the way to me driving to, wherever I need to catch a plane. And so I've contacted that kennel. Well, I think half of Newfoundland is taking their dogs to those kennels because they're booked. So the girl is looking for a spot to see if she can take both the dogs, which again this is supposed to be a simple trip. Book a trip, take the dog somewhere, get in a plane, go somewhere, feel pampered, come home. It sounds really simple. It has been anything but simple. So that got me thinking, where else could I go? I want something that's unique. I thought, well, I could get on a plane and just go to Montreal. Montreal's fun. It's exciting. There's always lots to do there. I'm not picking any place that's warm, so Montreal probably will be a little warmer than here. And then I thought, well, I've been to Montreal, and while I really like it, really wanted to go somewhere new that I hadn't been before. And so I thought, oh, there's a place here called the Fogo Island Inn. I thought, well, heck, I'll go there for 2 nights. That would be fun. Jump on a ferry. It's not, how hard can that be? And then I'm not looking for someone to look after the dogs quite as long, but it gets me what I'm after. It's very pricey, but it's doable. So I look on their website. No. It's the end of their season. They have no availability from about the third week of October until the end of November. Goodness, I say to myself, how hard is this? And you're wondering, well, go now, Jenny. Why do you have to wait? Well, I have an incredible amount of people coming to visit me in September. I'm still working. And then I have one of my best friends is coming in October, and her dates are still to be determined. So until those dates are firmed up, I thought, well, they'll be gone by the end of October, November, perfect. I can get off season rates. This is proving harder than it should be. So I thought to myself, I like bubbles. All the time I lived in New Zealand, I'll be honest with you, but prior to us moving to New Zealand in 1999, I think I could count on one hand how many times I'd had champagne in my life. It was always a special occasion, a wedding or a christening or something along those lines. In New Zealand, it's just another Friday night. And when I worked at a company called Vodafone, which was a lot of fun, one of the ladies I worked with used to call Friday at 4 o'clock, bubbles o'clock. So Friday at 4 o'clock, we often would, just the girls, go for a quick glass of bubbles before we headed home for the weekend. And as a result, I have developed a taste for, it doesn't have to be expensive, but I do love a really, really good crisp glass of bubbles. And in New Zealand, like I said, it's just another Friday night there. So I thought, where can I go that has good champagne, that's reasonably close to home, that I can afford? Say Pierre-Miquelon. You're going to France, you need a passport. It's not too far away. It's about a 6-hour drive for me, and weather could be a bit of a problem. Interestingly, the flights, ferry schedules, and hotels, none of their timings line up. So I would think in the off season, they would want to be complementary of one another. They are not complementary. You have to drive to a place called Fortune, Newfoundland, and the ferry goes Monday, Wednesday, Fridays. And I think coming from St. Pierre to Newfoundland, it's 9 o'clock. It's a 90-minute ferry. And it leaves again to go to St. Pierre at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Well, 1 o'clock in the afternoon is too early for me to leave home on the same day and make it there safely. Newfoundland, whether people know this or not, has this, people often talk about introduced species and how they cause problems in the countries or the areas that they're in. And Newfoundland, our introduced species is the moose. And November has, you're getting up onto the shortest amount of daylight in the year in the Northern Hemisphere. And moose and other big things like to come out at dusk and dawn. So the times you don't want to be on the highways are dusk and dawn, because the last thing you want to do is hit a bull moose at 90 kilometers or 100 kilometers an hour. It's not going to go well for either party. So that means leaving the day before. And I'm okay with that. And then spending the night in Fortune, and then getting up, having a leisurely breakfast, taking the ferry over at 1 o'clock to the hotel. And I had thought I would spend 3 nights there, but let's backtrack that. The ferry only goes 3 times a week. So I either spend 2 nights and come back, and that's a lot of driving for 2 nights, or I go for the four nights and just come back on the Friday. I am thinking that I will do the Friday. Now, there's been a lot of decisions coming in this, and what's the takeaway? The takeaway is that when you're rebuilding your life, and I talked about this a little while ago, spend the money. Here I am saying, I don't want to spend that kind of cash. That's okay. I don't have that kind of income that I can go and spend that now. So I need to be a little cautious, but I really want to get as much value and fluffy pillow time as I possibly can. So, I would like a facial, and I would like a massage, and I would like a good glass of champagne and a roaring fire and the North Atlantic, crashing up, and my book, and a good book. So that's what I'm thinking. And as you can tell by the sounds of my griffin, he's not too thrilled. So I do think, in the spirit of this whole rebuilding, you do need to recharge. You do need to think about how you can do what it is that you need to do to feel better. And for each person, it's going to be different. But for me, it was, I just needed somewhere to put it in my head for a few nights that wasn't this place, and that I could just maybe unwind a little bit, reflect on, at that point, it'll be, 6 months, and give some thought to what the next 6 months are going to look like, recognizing that we are about to come into the season of firsts. So, the first birthday, the first Christmas. And so my thinking was that taking a little time out just to recharge the batteries before we get into that kind of season might be an appropriate way to go. So, for those of you that are ahead of me on this journey, or that you're going through this with me, what are your thoughts? Do you believe you should recharge? Have you done that? What were some of the considerations that you made? As I said, I've got some logistical challenges, 1 with my geography, 2 with my dogs, 3 finances. So I have narrowed it down to, I think I'm going to go to St. Pierre in November and just spend a few days R&Ring and only driving during daylight hours. And here's one of the little faces. Who wouldn't want to make sure that that little face is well looked after? So, there are the logistics, and there are a number of them to work out. But yeah, please let me know what you think. If this resonates with you, please leave me a comment. Tell me what you're doing, how you're managing it. Or if you think I'm crazy and selfish, tell me that too. I'll see you next week, and I hope you have a super week.